My mother-in-law slapped me in front of guests because I wore a black dress to her party. That was the night she lost her son for good. Connie never liked me. She told Neil on our wedding day that I wasn't the kind of woman she raised him to end up with. Neil brushed it off, said she was just adjusting. 7 years later, she was still adjusting. Every holiday, she'd comment on my cooking. Every visit, she'd find something wrong with our house. She told me once that our curtains made her depressed, and that if I cared about my husband's happiness, I'd make more of an effort with the home. Every phone call with Neil ended with her reminding him that he settled when he married me. She told his brother the same thing, told her church friends the same thing, told anyone who'd listen that Neil deserved better, and I was lucky he was too kind to admit it. Neil always defended me in the moment, but never actually confronted her. He'd tell me that's just how she is, and that she didn't mean it. I put up with it because I loved Neil, and because Connie's opinions never actually changed anything between us. Then came Connie's 60th birthday. She threw a big party at her house, 30 guests. She put a dress code on the invitation, soft pastels only. She wanted everything to match for the photos. I'd planned to wear a light blue dress I bought specifically for the party. But the morning of, my younger sister called me from the hospital. She'd been in a car accident. Nothing life-threatening, but she broke her collarbone and needed someone there. I spent the entire day at the hospital with her, helped her get checked in, sat through her x-rays, waited while they put her in a sling, drove her home, got her settled on her couch with everything she needed. By the time I got back to our house, it was already past 6. The party started at 6:30. I had maybe 15 minutes to get ready. My blue dress was at the dry cleaner. I hadn't picked it up because I'd been at the hospital all day. The only thing in my closet that was clean and appropriate was a simple black dress. Knee-length, modest, completely normal. I threw it on and told Neil what happened. He said it was fine and that his mom would understand. She did not understand. I walked into that party and Connie spotted me from across the room before I even made it past the front hallway. She came straight at me. Didn't ask why, didn't ask about my sister. She grabbed my wrist and said I wore black to her birthday on purpose because I wanted everyone to think I was mourning having her as a mother-in-law. I told her my sister was in an accident and I came straight from the hospital and this was the only dress I had. She said I was lying. Then she slapped me right across the face in front of her entire guest list. 30 people watching, Neil's aunts and uncles, her church friends, her neighbors. And then she said if I couldn't respect her enough to follow a simple dress code, then I didn't deserve to be at her party and I should leave. I stood there holding my face. I looked at Neil. This was the moment. 7 years of comments and digs and put downs, and every single time he told me she didn't mean it. This was different. She'd put her hands on me in front of everyone. Neil stared at his mother. Then he turned to me and said, "We're leaving." Not me. We. Connie's face dropped. She said, "Neil, sit down. This is between me and her." Neil said, "No, you just hit my wife because of a dress and you're not even going to ask about her sister. We're leaving." Connie grabbed his arm and told him he was embarrassing her in front of her guests. Neil said she'd already done that to herself. He took my hand and we walked out. Connie called Neil that night. He didn't answer. She called every day for the next week. He let every single call go. On day 8, she showed up at our house. She walked in like nothing had happened and sat down on our couch and told Neil she was ready to put this behind them. Neil said he wasn't. She said she was his mother and she deserved forgiveness. Neil told her she'd hit his wife in front of 30 people over a dress while her sister was in the hospital and hadn't once said sorry. He told her every time she insulted me for 7 years, he made excuses because he didn't want to lose his relationship with her. But watching her slap me and then demand I leave while I stood there with a handprint on my face was the last thing he was ever going to excuse. Connie told him I was turning him against her. Neil said she'd done that all by herself. She left. 2 weeks later, Connie called Neil's older brother Ray to complain. Told Ray that I'd brainwashed Neil and destroyed their family. Ray called Neil to get his side. Neil told him exactly what happened. Ray called 3 other people who were at the party. They all confirmed it. Ray called Connie back and told her what every witness said. Connie told Ray they were all exaggerating and that she barely touched me. Ray told her he wasn't getting involved, but that she needed to apologize before she lost both her sons. Connie said she had nothing to apologize for. A month later, Connie's church group quietly stopped including her in their weekly dinners. 2 of the women at the party had told the rest of the group what happened. Nobody confronted Connie directly. They just stopped calling. Connie finally called Neil 3 months after the party. She was crying. She said she missed him. She said she missed Sunday dinners and she missed hearing his voice and she missed being part of his life. She said the house felt empty without him coming by. She said she sat in her kitchen every Sunday morning and made coffee for 2 out of habit and then poured the second cup down the drain. She said the holidays were coming and she couldn't imagine spending them alone. She said her church friends had stopped inviting her to dinners and she didn't understand why because she had been a member of that congregation for 22 years and now they treated her like a stranger. She said she felt like she was being punished for one bad moment and it wasn't fair. Neil listened. He didn't interrupt. He let her say all of it the way he always let people say their piece before he responded. When she finished, he asked her one question. He said, "Have you called my wife to apologize?" She went quiet. He said, "In 3 months, have you once picked up the phone and said sorry to the woman you hit in the face at your birthday party?" apology. She said, "Neil, I think we need to deal with things between us first, before bringing her into it." He said, "She is us. She's been us for 7 years. Every time you insulted her, you insulted my marriage. Every time you told people I settled, you told them my judgment was worthless. And when you slapped her in front of 30 people, you told everyone in that room that you don't respect the life I built. There is no version of this where you and I fix things without her." Connie said she didn't think she did anything that warranted a formal apology. She said the slap was a reaction, and she'd been under stress planning the party, and the black dress felt like a deliberate provocation. She was still calling it a provocation 3 months later. A black dress. A knee-length, modest, completely normal black dress worn by a woman whose younger sister had been in a car accident that morning, who spent the entire day at the hospital, who drove home with barely 15 minutes to get ready, who threw on the first clean thing she could find and still showed up to the party because she didn't want to miss Connie's 60th birthday. That was a provocation. Not the slap. Not the 7 years of insults. Not telling the entire world her son settled. The provocation was the woman who showed up anyway. Neil said, "Then we don't have anything else to talk about." He hung up. That phone call was a turning point, but not the one Connie wanted. It was the moment Neil stopped waiting for her to change. I watched it happen in real time because he was sitting next to me on the couch when he made the call. After he hung up, he sat there for a minute, staring at his phone. Then he looked at me and said, "I'm sorry it took me this long." I said, "You showed up when it mattered." He said, "I should have shown up sooner. The first time she said you weren't good enough for me, I should have told her she was wrong. The first time she insulted your cooking, I should have said something. The first time she rearranged seating at a holiday dinner to put you at the end of the table away from me, I should have moved my chair next to yours. I let 7 years of it happen because I was afraid of losing my mother, and I didn't realize I was losing you instead. Every time I said that's just how she is, I was choosing her comfort over yours. I was telling you that her behavior mattered more than your feelings, and I did it for 7 years." He stopped and pressed his palms into his eyes. He said, "I watched her slap you. I watched you stand there holding your face with a handprint on your cheek in a room full of people, and for about 3 seconds I almost did what I always do. I almost made an excuse. I almost said she didn't mean it. And then I looked at your face, and I realized that the woman I married had been absorbing 7 years of abuse from my mother, and I had been the one holding the door open for it. That was the turning point. Not for Connie. For us." I held his hand. I didn't say it's okay because it wasn't. 7 years of someone telling the world you're not enough does something to you whether you want it to or not. It sits in your bones. It changes the way you enter a room when her family is there. You start second-guessing yourself. You cook something for a holiday, and before anyone takes a bite, you're already bracing for the comment. You buy curtains, and instead of thinking about whether you like them, you think about whether Connie will have something to say about them when she visits. You stop wearing certain things because you know she'll look you up and down. You stop suggesting restaurants because she'll say the food was mediocre, and you shouldn't have chosen it. You hear it in quiet moments when you're alone, and you wonder if maybe the person who raised your husband knows him better than you do. Maybe she's right. Maybe he did settle. Maybe there's a woman out there who cooks better and decorates better and dresses better and would have worn the right pastel dress because she would have planned her whole day around Connie's party instead of being at the hospital with her sister. You push it down and you keep going, but it's always there in the background like a hum you can't quite identify. It took me 7 years to realize that hum wasn't doubt. It was Connie's voice, and it had been playing on a loop so long I'd started mistaking it for my own thoughts. What Neil said on that couch was the first time in 7 years I actually believed he didn't think his mother was right. Not because he defended me, he'd done that before, but because for the first time he acknowledged that he should have done more, and he was willing to lose his relationship with her entirely rather than let it continue. That wasn't a performance. That was a choice. The holidays came. Connie spent Thanksgiving with her sister in another state. Ray told Neil she'd called him crying the week before, asking if he would host a family dinner so she wouldn't have to be alone. Ray said he told her he'd host, but only if she apologized to me first. She said she needed more time. Ray said time was running out. He said he could feel the family splitting down the middle, and if she didn't do something soon, the divide would become permanent. She chose more time over 2 words. That told me everything. We spent Thanksgiving at my sister's apartment. My sister was out of the sling by then, but still recovering. She couldn't lift anything heavier than a coffee mug with her right arm, so she cooked the entire meal left-handed. The turkey was small, and she'd burned the bottom of the stuffing, and the mashed potatoes were lumpy, and we ate every bite of it. Neil brought a pie from a bakery, and my sister's roommate brought wine, and the 4 of us sat at a fold-out table that barely fit in the kitchen, and the chairs didn't match, and nobody cared. Nobody criticized my sister's cooking. Nobody commented on the size of the apartment or the state of the curtains, or the fact that the plates were from a thrift store. Nobody reminded Neil that he could do better. Nobody told him he settled. My sister raised her glass with her good arm and said, "To the people who show up when it matters." Neil looked at me when she said it. I knew he was thinking about the night of the party, the night he showed up, the night he finally chose. It was the best Thanksgiving I'd had in 7 years, and it happened at a fold-out table with burned stuffing and mismatched chairs. Christmas was harder. Neil got quiet in the weeks leading up to it. He didn't say much, but I could tell. Christmas had always been Connie's holiday. She decorated her house the day after Thanksgiving. She baked for 2 weeks straight. She wrapped every gift in the same gold paper she'd used since Neil was a child. Christmas without his mother wasn't just a missed holiday for Neil. It was the absence of every tradition he'd grown up with. He'd pick up his phone and look at it and put it down. He'd start to say something about calling her, and then stop. He scrolled through old photos when he thought I wasn't watching. One night, I found him sitting in the kitchen at at midnight, looking at a photo on his phone. It was a picture of him and Connie from Christmas when he was about 8 years old. He was sitting on her lap in front of a tree, and they were both laughing. He looked at me and said, "She wasn't always like this." I sat down next to him and said, "I know." He said, "I don't know when it changed. I don't know if it was when Dad left or when Ray moved away or when I got married. But somewhere along the way she decided that loving me meant controlling everyone around me, and the person she couldn't control was you. That's why she hated you. Not because you weren't good enough, because you didn't need her permission to be in my life." I didn't respond. I just sat with him. He put the phone down and went to bed. Christmas morning we exchanged gifts in our living room, just the two of us. He gave me a pair of earrings he'd picked out himself. They were simple, gold studs, not expensive, but he'd wrapped them in tissue paper and put them in a small box, and when I opened them he said, "I picked those because they're the kind of thing you'd actually wear, not what someone else thinks you should wear." I knew what he meant. Connie had given me jewelry twice over the years. Both times it was something I would never choose for myself. Gaudy pieces that matched her taste, not mine. Both times she'd watch me open the box and say, "I thought you could use something nice." Like I didn't own anything nice. Like I needed her to dress me. Neil's earrings were the opposite of that. They were me. New Year's came and went. January was quiet. February was quiet. In March, something happened that neither of us expected. Ray called. He said Connie had been to the doctor. She'd been having headaches for months and they found something. Nothing immediately dangerous, but something that needed monitoring and possibly treatment. Ray said she was scared. He said she had called him and cried for an hour and said she didn't want to go through it alone. Ray asked Neil if he would consider reaching out. Neil didn't answer right away. He stood in the kitchen with the phone against his ear and his eyes closed for about 10 seconds. Then he said, "I'll think about it." He hung up and looked at me. He said, "She's sick." I said, "I heard." He said, "What do you think I should do?" I said, "I think you should do whatever you can live with." He thought about it for 2 days. On the third day, he called Connie. She picked up on the first ring. She started crying immediately. She said she was scared and she missed him and she was sorry. He asked what she was sorry for specifically. She said, "For the party, for the slap, for what I said about your wife, for all of it." He asked if she meant it. She said yes. He said, "Then tell her, not me, her." 2 days later, my phone rang. Connie's name on the screen. I was standing in the kitchen making coffee. I stared at her name for 3 full rings. Neil was in the other room. He didn't know she was calling. I answered on the 4th ring. She didn't say hello. She didn't start with small talk. She said, "I'm sorry I hit you. I'm sorry I said those things about you for 7 years. I'm sorry I told people." Neil settled. He didn't settle. I know that. "I'm sorry about the curtains and the cooking and the dress code and every comment I ever made about your home. I'm sorry I made you feel like you weren't enough because you were always enough and I knew it, and that's why I couldn't stop." That last part surprised me. The admission that she knew, that every insult, every dig, every whispered comment to church friends and family members wasn't ignorance. It was intentional. She knew I was good enough for her son and she went after me anyway, because good enough meant she wasn't needed, and not being needed was the one thing Connie couldn't survive. She was crying. I could hear it in every word. 7 years of venom, and it came out in one phone call because a doctor's appointment reminded her that the clock was real, and the people she'd pushed away weren't guaranteed to come back. I let her finish. Then I said, "Thank you." I didn't say it's okay. I didn't say I forgive you. I didn't say we're fine now. I said, "Thank you," because the apology was owed and she had finally delivered it, and acknowledging that was enough for now. Not for always. For now. The rest would take time, if it came at all. I told Neil about the call. He asked how I felt. I said, "I feel like a woman who waited 7 years to hear 2 words from someone who should have said them after 5 minutes." He nodded. He called Connie back that evening. They talked for 20 minutes. He told her he loved her. He told her he would go with her to her next appointment. He told her things were not going back to the way they were. He said the old normal was gone. He said, going forward, there were rules and the rules were not negotiable. She would treat me with respect. Not politeness, respect. There's a difference, and Connie knew it because she'd been giving me politeness for 7 years while withholding respect the entire time. She would not comment on my cooking, my house, my curtains, my clothing, or my marriage. She would not tell anyone Neil settled. She would not speak about me to church friends or family members or neighbors or strangers in any way she wouldn't say directly to my face while looking me in the eyes. If she broke any of those rules even once, the phone would stop ringing again. And the next time, there would be no doctor's appointment or health scare that would bring him back. It would be permanent. She agreed to everything. She didn't argue. She didn't negotiate. She didn't try to rewrite the terms. She just said, "Okay." I think the doctor's office did what 30 people at a birthday party couldn't. It reminded her that she was running out of time, and that the time she had left was worth more than being right. We went to Connie's house for Easter. It was the first time I'd been there since the party. I stood in the driveway for a moment before we went inside. Neil noticed. He said, "We don't have to do this." I said, "I know. I want to." I wore a black dress. Not the same one. A different one. I didn't plan it as a statement. It was simply what I felt like wearing that morning. I pulled it from the closet and looked at it and put it on and didn't think twice about it until I was standing at Connie's front door and realized what I'd done. By then, it was too late and I wasn't going to change. I was done changing what I wore to make Connie comfortable. When I walked in, Connie looked at the dress. Her eyes went to it immediately the way eyes go to the thing they're trying not to see. She looked at the black fabric and then she looked at my face. I could see the machinery working behind her expression. The old Connie would have said something. The old Connie would have grabbed my wrist and told me I was being disrespectful. The old Connie would have made a scene in front of whoever was watching. This Connie looked at at the dress, looked at me, and then looked away and said, "Happy Easter, I'm glad you came." We sat at her table and ate the food she made, and she didn't comment on a single thing I brought. I had made a pecan pie from scratch, and she set it on the table without rearranging it or moving it to the side counter or replacing it with something Connie approved. She didn't rearrange the seating to separate me from Neil. She didn't pull him aside for a private conversation about our marriage. She didn't tell anyone I was lucky to be there. She just sat there and ate and talked and asked my sister how her collarbone was healing, which was the first time she'd ever mentioned my sister in 7 years. When dinner was over, she walked me to the door. She put her hand on my arm briefly, not grabbing, just resting it there, and said, "Thank you for coming." 2 words again. The right 2 words. Not "I'm sorry," which she'd already said. Not "you look nice," which would have been a lie she didn't need to tell. Just thank you for coming, for showing up, for walking back into the house where she hit me and giving her the chance to be different. Neil held my hand on the drive home. He didn't say anything for a while. The streetlights moved across the windshield and the radio was off and the car was quiet, in the way our house used to be quiet before things got better. Then, he said, "She looked at your dress." I said, "I know." He said, "She didn't say a word." I said, "I know." He squeezed my hand. That was enough.